Whoa. I just got a little voice thing that said this meeting is being recorded. That's something new. Okay. So start on your backs and just take a couple minutes. I'll guide very shortly as soon as I get over onto my mat. Just take a couple of minutes to drop out of your conceptual thinking mind and into your body. Whatever that means for you. And it might be stillness and it might be some quiet moving around. Could use the breath to facilitate that. And then wherever you are, bring your body into the shape of a big X. So the feet are wider than the mat, arms sort of in a Y shape. So you have this just a really open shape with your body, and you can begin to press through one heel and the other heel, sort of moving back and forth, feeling so movement through your pelvis and low back. As you press through one heel, you might stretch the same arm long. And slide your arms together over your head, your feet together. So legs are in Tadasana shape, toes pulled back towards the shins. And the arms are reaching away, but tuck your shoulders in towards your midline. So you feel your whole shoulder blade pressing to the floor. And just a little bit of light pressure against everything touching the floor. So the back of your skull, the shoulders, hips, buttocks, legs, and then a release. And then again, and a release. Right, and then you can soften here. So you can soften your um, energy or your holding or whatever, and just lift your left leg up now, just slightly off the floor, and bring it across your right leg so that you begin to sort of spiral to the right, and just touch your left toes down to the floor, and then open back up or come back to the starting position. So both feet into Tadasana, legs into Tadasana, arms are still overhead. Lift your right leg and just cross it across your left leg, across midline. So you begin to just spiral open slightly and then come back to the starting position. And just take a couple of times in each direction, just beginning a bit of a spiral open. If this is problematic at all, you can just bend your knees and take some windshield wipers, pretty much the same movement, but without the long lever of your leg being straight. So do what feels right for your body this morning. And then we'll come back to that starting position and pick the left leg up, come across your midline. And as you move towards the right, let your whole body move. Your right foot will come to the floor. And as you come onto your belly, bend your left knee, so that your left knee is out to the side. So kind of the supine or the prone triangle. So your right knee is lifted even with your hip or about there. And then take your left hand into the floor and just press into the floor and look up and over your left shoulder. So right arm is extended long. So you're in a bit of a twist with the left knee bent, left hand into the floor, and then lower yourself back down to your belly. Roll onto your side as you roll back onto your back. You'll catch your right ankle with your left, so the feet are crossed, the ankles are crossed. And then come back to Tadasana. And we'll try the other side. So lift the right leg, cross midline, and roll until you're coming onto your belly. Your right knee will bend and you'll slide your right knee out into like a triangle shape. So right knee out about even with the hip or maybe a little bit lower. See if you can keep both hip pointers on the floor, the front hip bones there. And then keep the left arm long, press your right hand just beside your chest and spin yourself open slightly. So lift your body up and maybe take a look over your right shoulder. Lower yourself back down to the floor and then roll yourself back to the starting position. Great. Now bring knees into chest. Squeeze your knees into your chest. Maybe that variation of a happy baby where you bring your forearms underneath your knees, take opposite wrist with opposite hand. A little rock back and forth from one side of your low back to the other. And then release your arms into the T. Bring your knees over to the right. And if possible, straighten your legs, stacking your feet in Tadasana. So legs are in Tadasana over to the right. So you're in a little bigger twist, a little deeper twist. And maybe you can bring your gaze over to your left hand. And then bend the top knee, come back to center, pull the knees into the chest again, or take that happy baby variation. Arms out to the T, bring your knees over to the left. And again, if it's too much to straighten the legs, just leave the knees bent. And you straighten the legs here. You're making an L shape with your body. Legs are straight, legs are stacked, over to the left. And you could perhaps take your gaze over to your right hand. So deepening the twist. And then bend through the top knee and roll back up onto your back. Keep your knees now stacked over your hips. We'll just excite the core just slightly here and say, get it to wake up, yeah? So from here, just touching right toes down to the floor, lifting back up, touching left toes. So the legs stay in this shape of stacked over, knees stacked over hips, and you're just touching toes, back up, start to feel your core. And then when you feel like, all right, I've got it going here, interlace your hands behind your head, lift your head and chest, and continue the toe taps. Drawing your navel in towards your spine, lifting, if you can, the whole shoulder blade off the floor without using your neck. So let your head just rest in your hands as you use your core to lift. And you could also take your toe taps out a little bit further. You'll feel more of the lower belly engaged. So stretching the legs a little bit longer, maybe tapping just out on the far end of your mat. Good. And then we'll keep the head and shoulders lifted and take the legs up towards the ceiling, soles of the feet pressing towards the ceiling. Good. And then we'll slowly just lower the legs. Oh, maybe, not quite about 45 degrees or so. Feel that. Draw your navel up and in. Maybe you can lower a little bit more. And a little bit more. And you're maybe now quivering and shaking. See if you can hold that. Then bend your knees and bring your knees in towards your elbows. Bring your elbows towards your knees. And then rest your head back down to the floor. Rest the soles of your feet to the floor. Take a couple of pelvic tilts here. And then you can grab the edges of your mat or cross at the ankles, rock yourself up, and come to hands and knees and back into child's pose. So whatever feels supportive to you in a child's pose here, you might have something in between your blocks, in between your calves and your thighs. If you can rest your forehead on the floor, you can do that. And if you need to have a block or want to have a block for your forehead, if you're not quite warm in your back yet, you could put a block right underneath your forehead. And just allow your back body to spread, to open. Then we'll press up, come on to hands and knees and table. So the knees underneath the hips and the hands just a little forward of the shoulders. Now, as if you were taking a lid off a jar with both hands, can you sort of screw your hands into the floor so that they're turning to the outsides? Yeah, turning. So press your hands into the floor and then isometrically turn them to the outside of the mat, toward the outside edges of your mat. Feel what happens to your shoulders when you do that. So really getting strong there. Then can you draw your hip pointers towards one another? Really feel the strength in your core. And then just begin to move through some cat-cows. So inhale, let the belly reach down towards the floor, gazes up, tail feathers spread, and then exhale, round, press your back up towards the ceiling. And move back and forth in that way. Keep that really strong shape with your arms, with your core as you move through your cat-cows. That stability in the shoulders, in the core. Great. And then we'll come to neutral. Okay, and reestablish. So press your hands into the floor and then twist, sort of twist them out towards the outer edge isometrically. Feel what happens with your shoulders and your arms. You should have a little external rotation happening in the arms, and the shoulders are dropping away from the neck, from the ears. And then draw your hip pointers towards one another. Good. Now bring your left side ribs towards your left hip. So you're sort of shortening that side of your body as you look over your left shoulder. And then come back to center. Draw your right ribs towards your right hip as you look over your right shoulder. And then come back to center. So it's a very slow wagging of your tail. So left side ribs towards left hip, shortening that side of your waist, looking over your left shoulder, back to center, right ribs towards right hip, shortening that side of your waist, looking over your right shoulder. Take a couple more on each side. Very subtle. It's really just kind of wagging our tail so the hips go over to one side as we shorten opposite side of the waist. Good. When you come back to center this time, turn your toes under, press up and back to downward facing dog. Now find that same action with the hands. And squeeze the legs. Great. Now rock forward to plank. And press into the floor. Really press the floor away. Press your heels back. Then drop your knees to the floor so that you're in a sort of a half plank, and slowly lower down to your belly. Make a little pillow with your hands, resting your forehead on the pillow, tops of the feet on the floor. Great. Now, really pay attention here to keeping your hip pointers touching the floor. So pelvis stays nice and low on the floor. And then lift your right leg. Keep the hip pointers touching the floor. And then release the right leg, lift the left leg. Great. Now go back and forth with this a few times, really keeping your pelvis level as you lift one leg and then the other. Maybe 3 on each side. Keep pressing your pubic bone into the floor. So there's a little bit of an anterior tilt in the pelvis. This will keep your back from sort of that low back spot that can be bothersome from sort of kinking up there. And then lift both feet, both legs, hip pointers stay on the floor, and then draw your legs together. See if you can touch the big toe mounds. And release. Slide your elbows underneath your shoulders and come to Sphinx. Draw the hip pointers towards one another, pubic bone into the floor, and navel up and in. Feel the stability there. Draw your shoulders down and in, away from your ears. Great. So from here now, from the Sphinx, you'll bring your hands right to where your low ribs would be, and then you'll probably sink a little bit, but press your hands up and come into locust. Lift your legs. Back of your neck stays long. Then take your hands back down to the mat by your low ribs. Press yourself up and back towards child's pose. Keep your knees wide this time, big toes together. And see if you can come to rest in that space between your legs. Again, block is great for the forehead if you want it. And come back up to all fours to table. And now just sort of wing your feet out to the outside edges of your mat. So your feet are outside your mat. Turn your toes under, press your hips up and back. So now you're in this wide-legged, wide stance, downward dog. So the feet went outside the mat. Same thing here with the hands, as if you're screwing a lid jar. So the hands kind of move isometrically to the outside edges of your mat. Feel how that draws your triceps down towards the floor, shoulders down and in. Squeeze your legs. Great. Then rock forward, high plank, with the wide leg setup. Press into the floor, lift your back, reach your heels away. Great, then you'll drop your knees, same thing, but we're just wide in the legs, and then lower yourself slowly to the floor, all the way down to your belly. Make a little pillow with your hands, rest your forehead on your hands, keep your legs in that wide open position. Okay, and then keeping your pelvis level, right hip pointer on the floor, lift your right leg. Set it down, lift your left leg. Toes are pointed, legs, squeeze the muscles to the bone on the legs, and go back and forth a few times in this position. It doesn't cause you any pain. Keep pressing your pubic bone into the floor, so that anterior tilt of the pelvis as you move back and forth here a few times. Coming back to center, take your elbows underneath your shoulders, come back to Sphinx. Legs are just wide. Draw the pubic bone down to the floor, draw the navel up towards the spine. Neck is long. Good. From here, we keep the feet on the floor while we do this. We'll start with just raising the upper body, or keeping the upper body raised. So see if you can bring your hands alongside your body and then keep your upper body lifted as much as possible. Arms lift towards the ceiling, palms lift towards the ceiling, then lift the legs as well. And you'll probably sink down some, that's okay. Great. Now hands alongside your low ribs, press yourself up and up to table, back towards child's pose. So you don't have to rest your hips all the way back on your heels this time. Then slide the hands forward slightly. Bring your knees in a little closer now. Turn your toes under, press up and back. Downward facing dog. Great. Okay, from here, you're going to walk your feet up to your hands. This is where you might want a block for a halfway lift. The back of the neck is long. And then walk your hands back towards your feet. You might have to bend your knees, and eventually you'll bend your knees quite a lot as you bring your fingertips to line up with your heels. Reach your arms forward. So you're in Utkatasana now, a variation of Utkatasana. And then press yourself to stand up. So in Tadasana now, in this Tadasana, put your weight into your left foot and lift your right leg up. Externally rotate your right leg, so your knees pointing out to the right. And then internally rotate your leg and press your leg out behind you. So a little balancy. If you need to move to some wall space, you can. Then take the right leg behind the left leg, slightly bending through the left leg, and just touch the right leg over to the left, right foot over to the left. So your left leg is bent, your front leg is bent, you have swept the back leg behind, you're just touching it behind you. Then bring yourself back up to that sort of modified warrior three. Swing your right leg back out, back up in front of you, right where you started, and then set your right foot down. We'll try the other side. Put your weight into your right foot, lift your left leg so your knee is bent, and you could take your knee with your hands if you need to or want to. And then bring your left leg out to the left. Internally rotate as you press the left leg behind you. Bend through your right knee a bit so that you can bring your left leg behind you and touch it over to the right. And then sweep the left leg back out to the left and back to the front and set down. We'll try that again. Okay. Try that again. Again, you could have some wall space right beside you if you wanted to. So weight is in your left leg. You'll lift the opposite leg, rotate it out to the side, internally rotate and press it behind you. Then bend through the standing leg, sweep that leg behind you, touch the toe down. Then come out to the side again and back to where you started. Set both feet down. Try the other side. Lift the left leg up, externally rotate it, internally rotate it, press it out behind you. Bend through your standing leg, sweep the left leg behind, touching the right side of your mat or the right side of your space, then back and settle into Tadasana. Great, good work. Okay, from here now, let's take one vinyasa if you want, or just meet me in this position. So like the athletic position. So knees are bent, your hands are on your knees. Great. And then we're going to bring our knees are about hip distance apart or so. Bring your hands to the outside of your knees. Press your knees into your hands. And then take your hands to the inside of your knees and press your knees into your hands. So we sort of let the hands win in one position. We let the knees win in the other position. So we're just sort of moving back and forth, doing a little isometric work with the legs. So pressing hands against knees, let the hands win more in one position, let the knees win more in the opposite position. Good. From here, remove your hands, bring your hands forward. Feel the strength of your legs as you press on up to standing. Release your hands to your sides. Whew. Okay. With your feet in a wide Tadasana stance, bring your right arm out in front of you. Palm faces the ceiling. And then as you lift your arm over your head, turn your palm all the way so now your palm is facing behind you. Sweep your arm behind you and come back to the starting position. Reach your arm out in front like you're handing something to someone. And then as you come up over your head, turn your palm all the way so it faces the back and come around. All right, just take that a few times. Give the legs a rest. And then see if you can do this more in the shoulder than twisting the torso. Great. Last time you come to Tadasana, we'll take it the other direction. So reach your hand behind you, palm up towards the ceiling. And then as you come around, palm down and back to center. Reach behind you, palm up, sweep your arm up overhead and come back to the starting position. So we're still in the same arm and we're just changing the orientation of the palms. Good. Back to the starting position, we'll take the left hand. Reach forward like you're handing something to someone. And as you sweep up over your head, then you're going to turn the palm completely to face the back and come around. Reach forward, palm is open, up overhead, internally rotate your arm, reach back with the palm, and come all the way around. And try that a few times. As you continue in this, sort of using less of your core and twisting and seeing if you can just keep it all in the shoulders. Great. And then we'll go backwards. So we'll press back, reach back, come around. Kind of like the backstroke. Take it in the opposite direction as you come around. Great. Coming back to the starting position, we'll take the right arm forward and the left arm backwards. Right arm forward, palm up, left hand backwards. Okay, so arms are going in opposite directions. Good. Coming back to the starting place, left hand forward and right arm back. Much harder for me to coordinate that direction. Good. And then come back to center. And now turn your palms out away from the sides of your bodies. Inhale, reach the arms up, touching palms together. And exhaling through your heart center, back to starting position. Turn the palms out, sweep the arms up, and release through center. Great. Now you're going to need your block. Back to the legs. Now you'll need your block. And now we're going to take the block and let's put our weight into our left foot first. So the right leg is going to be your block's in your left hand, your weight's on your left leg. And your right foot is kind of like a rudder. Okay. So the first position will be to bend through the left leg slightly and touch the block behind your foot. And come back up. And then reach the block over to the left side as far as possible. So you bend through the left leg. Right leg's like a rudder. Stand back up. Then bend through the standing leg. Touch the block out in front of you. Great, and come back up. So you still have, you're just standing on the left leg and then bend through the left leg and bring the block across midline, touch the block down and stand back up. Good. So it's a little bit of a half squat in the standing leg as you move the block back, side, forward, and a bit across your midline. Let's try it on the right side. So put your weight, and you can have ball space if you want that. So put your weight in your right foot now, block in the right hand, and then come to forward. Back up, out to the side. The block, and you're bending through that right leg slightly. Good. Actually, we started in a different orientation, but that's okay. Bring the block behind you, at least even with your heel. Back up, and then we'll go across midline and back up. Good. And release, and you're going to feel this in your glutes later on. So let's try both sides one more time. And I'll change my orientation to you. So weight into the left leg. We'll bend through that leg. Bring the block and touch it behind you. Stand back up. Bring the block as far out to the side. Stand back up. Bring it out in front of you, bending through that standing leg. Step back up. And then see if you can cross midline slightly. And step back up. Woo. Good work. Take your weight into your other foot. Okay, and you might be challenged. I'm challenging myself because I did something to my pinky toe. I don't know if I broke it, but right foot, this is super challenging for me right now. So weight into the opposite foot. You'll bring the block behind you. Step back up. And really suck that hip in when you step back up. Bring the block out to the side as far as possible. Bending through the standing leg. Step back up. Then in front of you. Great. Back up. And then across your body. And step back up. Good. With the block in your hand now, with the block in your hands, take the block above your head, squeeze the block between your hands, squeeze your legs, and then drop your hips down and back and reach the block forward. So you come back into an Utkatasana shape. So squeeze the block between your hands, let your hips move back as far as possible, perhaps getting your legs even parallel to the floor. Great, from here, just rock yourself forward using your block to come to a halfway lift. Great, and then heel toe the feet in slightly, take hands to hips, take hips back, press yourself up. Tadasana. Good. Now we're going to try another little balancing move, so you might want to get that block out of the way. Good. Come back to Utkatasana. Feet are nice and wide and balanced, and you're going to straighten the right leg out and tap it in front of you. Okay. Then slide that foot back and press it into Warrior Three. Bend through the standing leg, bring the right foot behind the left leg. Come back to the Warrior Three. Set the right foot back into Crescent Lunge. Woo. Inhale, reach fingertips up. And exhale, hands down around the front foot. Step yourself back to downward facing dog. Squeeze your legs. Really find that same arm position, so like you're really turning your hands isometrically towards the outside of your mat. Feel the shoulder strength here, how the shoulder blades come onto the back. And then walk your feet up to your hands. Maybe you didn't kick your block too far away. You come back up to a halfway lift. Bend through your knees. Bring your arms out in front of you in sort of a modified Utkatasana. Keep the weight now in the right foot and touch the left foot out in front. So your hips are back, your left leg is kind of straight here, you're touching the toes out. And then sweep the foot back behind you and come into a Warrior Three shape. Good. Then bring your left foot behind your right leg. Right leg is bent, so you're in a little half squat with the left leg behind. Okay. Then back to the warrior three shape. And then reach that foot back and come back into crescent lunge. Draw the navel up and in. Good. Inhale, reach your fingertips towards the ceiling, and then exhale, fold your hands down around your front foot, step back to downward facing dog. Right here, really squeeze the legs. And then walk your feet up to your hands. If you had kept your block handy, you can come into a halfway lift with the block. Okay, we'll do the whole sequence one more time. So bend through your knees and set your hips back, come into Utkatasana with sort of you're leaning forward, hips are back, knees are bent, and you've got your arms straight. So put your weight into your left foot now, left knee is bent, and straighten your right toes out to in front of you. So you're touching your right toes on the floor. And then sweep that foot back and come into airplane or some version of warrior three. Bend through your standing leg a little deeper. Bring your right toes behind your right leg behind your left, just touching your toes behind you. Back to the warrior three. And then hips go back, right foot goes back, crescent lunge. Draw the tailbone down, fingertips up. Reaching, watching you're not overarching the low back. Exhale your hands down around your front foot. Step back, downward facing dog. Ooh, this is where downward dog feels good, yeah? And then walk your feet up to your hands. Halfway lift. Wherever you need to make that work, you can come also with your hands to your shins. Keep the back of your neck long. And then sit down, back into the Utkatasana. Now it's weight into the right foot, reach the left toe out in front of you. Sweep that foot behind you and come into a variation of warrior three. A little bit trickier for me on this side today. Bend through your standing leg. Bring your left leg behind your right leg. Toes on the floor. Really feel this in your right hip. And then back to the warrior three variation. Drive your hips back. Left toes come to the floor. You're back in crescent lunge. Reach fingertips up. And exhale your hands down around your front foot. Step back to downward facing dog. Great. From this downward facing dog, come forward into high plank. Lower the knees to the floor, nice and wide. Bring your hips back towards the child's pose, but don't quite rest them on your heels. Arms stay forward. Really reach the hands forward and draw your shoulder blades down and in. And then same thing, you're kind of trying to bring the right hip towards, or the left hip, either way you want to start, towards the same side waist. So you're shortening one side. So you're wagging your tail as you look over the side that you're shortening, away from the side you're lengthening. So back and forth a few times. Okay, and then press yourself up to table. Bring your hip to the floor. Come around to a seat. And now in your seat, bring yourself into as much as possible. It could be Sukhasana, some sort of easy seat, but if you can line up your ankles with your knees, so you might have a block on the upper leg. So really now we're gonna release some of the tension in our hips. So it could be here. You might be able to really get both legs, lower legs parallel to one another. And if not, just bring the feet in a little closer towards the groin. And you might start with your hands back behind you to keep a neutral spine. If that feels pretty good for you, you can start to fold forward or lean forward. Maybe not fold, maybe lean is the operative word. If this is too much on your low back, go to the floor on your back and just take a figure 4, which is gonna work the same area we're targeting here. So just a little bit of a lean forward, but what I don't want to do is collapse in my low back here. So if you're feeling like you can go a little deeper, go a little deeper. And then we'll come back up to more of an upright position, lean back onto our hands and switch the cross of our legs. And maybe this side needs a little bit more support. This side might be a little tighter. Same thing, you can start with your hands behind your back. You can be on your back in a figure 4. If you're upright sitting and you have that nice neutral spine, you can begin to just pitch forward slightly, feeling now the lengthening in the hip where we were just doing a lot of strengthening. Maybe over a little bit of breath, you can remove the block if that was your setup. And wherever you are, coming back up to an upright position, undoing the feet and bringing your feet, soles of your feet out in front of you, hands behind you, fingertips pointing away or out to the sides. Press up into reverse table. And then from here, we'll just drop the hips once, twice. Now, it might not work for your neck to look backwards. You might have to keep your gaze right up at the ceiling. But just take a few reps here, just lowering the hips to the floor and back up. Then finally pausing in this reverse table. Press your feet firmly into the floor. Keep the knees drawing forward towards the end of your mat. Now I feel that in my glutes again, right? The outer hips. So we'll lower all the way to the floor. Hands behind the legs. And here, even if you did figure 4 before in the last sequence, take that figure 4 again. For those of you that did the seated fold, you can take a figure 4 now, one side and then the other. Or you could start in the figure 4 and then collect your lower leg, reach the opposite leg away, and maybe get a little deeper lengthening here. whatever feels like the right amount for you. Keep a little bit of activity in your feet. And just begin to slow down your breath. You could unwind here, and any number of things is appropriate now. You could come back to some soft windshield wiper movement as you begin to move towards Final Shavasana. If you want some sort of supported cooling inversion, take a block right underneath your sacrum for supported bridge, or with the block in the same spot, legs right up towards the ceiling in supported shoulder stand. You could also move this whole thing to a wall, or legs up the wall, or you choose what feels like a nice way to finish your practice. Good work today. And any version of final resting Shavasana that works for you. Let's just take a couple minutes to drop back down. Let gravity do its good work. Sometimes working against it, sometimes working with it. Take a couple of rounds of deep breath. Really releasing any effort on the exhale. Scanning from the crown of your head to the tips of your toes for any holding. And can you release the holding, release the effort? No more need for effort. Really soften your face, the skin on your face, and your eyes, around your eyes, your mouth. Let your inhales be into a soft belly. And I invite you to turn the corners of your mouth up slightly, bringing a smile through your mouth. And as you do that, any gratitude that pops up, acknowledge that. Take your time in Shavasana, stay as long as you like. You can also roll to one side and spend a few breaths here on your side body. If you'd like to press up to a seat, you could do that now. But please stay if you want to stay. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May peace follow you all day, and may you pass it on to others. Namaste.